Hi, Robin with Oxy-Dry, and it's a Sunday, and I am just getting my van ready for the week. I actually washed it. It's just a smidge above freezing, but it was just so muddy from driving around on the dirty roads, I just couldn't stand it anymore. And my hands got kind of cold, but it cleaned up pretty good. But today, I thought I'd do a little video on the vacuum that I use and why I use it, because vacuuming is very much a part of how I go about cleaning carpets. In fact, in almost every case, will spend more time actually vacuuming a carpet than I do the actual cleaning process. Of course, vacuuming is actually part of the cleaning, but the majority of the cleaning process is vacuuming. I will pre-vacuum the carpet, the residential, when I'm doing people's homes. Although often people will have vacuumed their carpet ahead of me. I will, in almost every case, always vacuum anyway, because this vacuum is certainly far more powerful than anything anyone else would have, which I'll get to in a minute. And I'm going to be making sure I go over every square inch of the carpet, and you're paying attention to edges and corners, etc., as I do so with my edging tool there. And it's part of our cleaning process as a professional carpet cleaning business that it's part of the cleaning process to do that, to do it properly. And then in almost every case, I will also run the vacuum over the carpet after I've cleaned it. It's just very slightly damp in most cases, and it certainly doesn't suck any moisture into the vacuum because of my ability to precisely control the amount of moisture that's going onto the carpet. And I'll get to some details about why that vacuum is really good for that in a second. But I just wanted to just talk about the history of what I have used over the years as a vacuum, starting with the Sanyo over here. When I first started about 26 years ago, my very first vacuum was an Electrolux version of this particular vacuum here, which is like Pro Team, of course. But I only had that one for, maybe a year, perhaps less, when I found the Sanyo was much more powerful than the original Electrolux version of this, many years ago, of course. So I used Sanyos. I went through a few of them, and what I ended up finding, they're very powerful vacuum, but there's no height adjustment. It just kind of floats along like the Pro Team, actually. So there's no adjustment to raise and lower the head, the brush roll. See, it says automatic height adjustment. What that means is it just slides across the carpet on a bottom plate, and the brush roll is where it is. So it's set for every, I guess you could say it's a compromised adjustment for every type of carpet. And it would work fine. It is a bagged vacuum. It's got lots of power, airflow, suction, whatever. But I found that what ended up happening is within about a year or so, I never had a motor burnout, but I would have where the body and swivels off of the head there, they always ended up breaking there. They would crack there. And that's actually an issue with vacuums as they age, as the plastic parts start to age, and actually I'll get to that when I get to the Pro Team here. And this one here, actually, the handle, this vacuum is about 20 years old now. This was my wife's vacuum up until, well, about a year or so ago, when I got her a Shark, which is parked over on the right there. But anyway, it's we've never repaired it other than me replacing I had to, what do you call that? You put the two parts together, the glue, epoxy. I do epoxy this handle here, and it's been fine since. Other than that, I've never replaced the brush roll even. No parts, no switch, nothing to the motor, nothing. So it's been a great vacuum, but it wasn't ideal for my purposes for carpet cleaning, partly because when you go to switch over to doing edges, it's a bit awkward the way that thing would work. And I decided I wanted to go to a commercial vacuum, so a few years later I ended up getting my first Pro Team vacuum. And I used the Pro Teams for the longest. I used them for, oh, maybe probably 10 years, maybe more. And they've changed a little bit over the years. The filtration, they have a HEPA filter, 2 HEPA filters on it. And then it has the edging tool which pulls out. It has a motor in the power head to spin the brush roll, and a vacuum motor. They're a good vacuum, although they're not greatly powerful. It's actually designed as a commercial, for doing low power commercial carpet. It has no height adjustment, and I've done a video where I talked about how the head is designed with slots in the front of it, so that as it goes across a glue down carpet, it is really designed for that type of carpet. Ideally, I mean, it works okay in a residential setting, but when you get into the plusher carpets, it definitely lacks performance in that situation. Plus, because it doesn't have any height adjustment, that's part of the reason. And it's actually not all that powerful. I think it's about 100 CFM and 100 or 195 inches of water lift. So I think it's actually under 100 CFM. I'm not positive what it is, but it's fine. It's okay. I mean, it's just there are better choices. And then I went to Kirby, and the Kirby is they call the Kirby the airflow king because it has a massive amount of airflow compared to other vacuums. That it moves through the vacuum motor. It has a different design with the fan forward, or the I don't know if that's not the right way they call it now. But anyway, the vacuum fan is right behind here, actually, and it pulls the air through and blows it through the fan and up into the bag. So it doesn't have what we call a sealed vacuum, which this type of vacuum and that type of vacuum has, where the vacuum motor is behind the bag and it draws the air through the bag, whereas this blows the air into the bag. The Kirby is a very good vacuum for straightforward vacuuming. Where it lacks is that in order to do edges and corners, if you use the Kirby, you have to switch over to the hose, which requires you disconnecting the brush roll, unclips, and then you hook up the hose. And the hose, I'll get to that in a sec. I'll show you an interesting little demonstration in a minute. But because it has really low water lift, I think it's around 45 inches of water lift compared to, well, almost any other, at least sealed vacuum, which are usually up 95 or so inches of water lift. The Kirby has very low water lift, which means that when it goes to pick up heavier things, like if a penny or something like that, it won't pick it up, whereas any of these other vacuums certainly would. But it picks up good fine dust. It's just a different principle. I'm not saying it doesn't work well pulling out dust and junk from the bottom of a carpet. It certainly does that. It'll even, in many cases, it'll actually even lift the carpet off the underpad. It's quite impressive to see that. But it is a little awkward when it comes particularly to doing your edges and corners. You either bring in a separate little vacuum, like a little Shark handheld, which I also have, or you have to put the hose on and switch over, which means you got to bring in the hose as well. So in other words, you're actually you're bringing in a hose, and I would actually use a longer hose than that, because that hose is ridiculously short, or you'd have to carry in a separate vacuum. So that was one of the reasons that I switched from the Pro Team over to the Kirby. And one of the other reasons I switched from the Pro Team is because I was looking for greater performance, and the Kirby, as far as vacuuming dirt and junk and dust and whatever from deep down on the carpet, the Kirby definitely is better than the Pro Force or the Pro Team. So that was one reason. Plus, I was finding that these things were literally starting to, the plastic was just disintegrating on me. This top I had to replace. This vacuum's not that old. It was only like maybe 6 months old, and the hinge right here, the whole plastic and underneath here shattered, and I had to this was a top from an older vacuum which I put on there, and then the next thing that happened was this whole back mechanism just shattered and fell apart. So that really turned me off to the Pro Teams. First, I guess maybe they've changed the quality of the plastic that they're making them out of. I don't know. But anyway, we'll go over to this vacuum. This is the same type of vacuum, meaning that the fan, the fan is before the bag, so that all the dirt is blown into the bag, as opposed to a sealed vacuum. A lot of guys talk about how they really like the sanitaires on some of the Facebook pages. Carpet cleaners say they like them. And it definitely has a lot of power. It has similar airflow to the Kirby, but there is no provision for putting a hose onto it. It is really loud. It is like a banshee, I tell you. And of course, this one is the shakedown bag with the clear cup, which I did a modification on a Kirby and had one of those bags on a Kirby for a while. Then I was using that, and that was impressive, except it had all the drawbacks to the Kirby. And the bags, I only get it like a couple of months, and I have to replace them because they would just start to blow dust like crazy. They don't filter well. And then I was having issues with this mechanism which I was buying. It started to get very hard to find because they would break. The hinges would break, and other things. The snap on the front which would break. So I had trouble getting the replacement parts. So it was, I guess you could say, this style I think is basically gone obsolete, or it's just getting hard to get the parts. Even the bags themselves, they were getting up $30, $40. I think the last time I looked at the price of these bags, they were getting up to $70, and that's in Canada, of course. So that's just getting really ridiculous. So that put an end to this style that I was experimenting with on the Kirby. But I went back to using the Kirby with the standard bag anyway, and that solved those issues, and it filters well with the, especially the newer one has an even better filtration in the bag. And then I did some experimenting with the bagless vacuums, and I bought a Workhorse. There's a lot of talk on YouTube channels, etc., how wonderful the Workhorse is, and I finally got one. I decided I got to give it a try, which is obviously a bagless vacuum, cyclonic, and as far as performance goes, it definitely is impressive to see the dust arriving in the canister, which you can with that, and I put some videos showing that. Definitely impressive. What's not impressive is that where the filter tray is, you really have to put a window insulation strip in there, because it bypasses that filter. It's just not a good seal in there, and it'll go through the motor and it'll burn it out really fast. But I did that anyway. But you have to clean out that filter. It clogs up quite quickly. I quickly learned to carry extra filters or clean them out right away often. It could clog in the cyclonic, you get hair in there, and that would happen fairly often. Using the hose, I actually got a Kirby pipe here, as you can see, and I put that on there, and that worked fine. But to switch over to using the hose, you have to flip this valve at the bottom there. A little bit awkward. It's a narrow vacuum, so pretty, not wide, in other words, so you're moving back and forth a little bit more to cover an area. The other issue I noticed is that on the release mechanism underneath the machine, there's like a nylon glider, whatever, and I could see it was wearing down very rapidly, and it isn't quite there yet, but it was almost to the point where the metal part would be rubbing on the plastic of the body, and that would destroy the body and make this, I'd have to replace the vacuum pretty quickly once they got to that point. So in order to clean out the brush roll, there's screws you have to undo and pull the bottom. There's a bottom plate. It isn't really, and it was never intended to be a commercial vacuum, so it was an interesting experiment. This particular one has the low, medium, high, has height adjustment, so that's nice. By the way, so does that, and of course so does the Kirby, but those two vacuums don't, I mentioned earlier. Then Shark is very similar to a Dyson. I think it's actually a better vacuum for a few reasons. but I decided to get a Shark, partly because it was really cheap. It was on sale. And we were thinking about maybe replacing my wife's vacuum anyway. So I thought, okay, I'll get this vacuum, and if I like it, I'll get another one for myself. And if not, well, I'll just let my wife have it. And so I brought it home and gave it a try. And overall, it actually works pretty well. I did try it on a couple of jobs, and then I realized it just wasn't quite right for me. I don't like the swivel. It's got that, what do you call it? The swivel thing. I do not like that. I just don't. I find that awkward. And you see the junk getting into the canister, etc. But this is not a commercial vacuum. It's not going to stand up to the everyday use. I mean, I literally was thinking about it. You know, I actually run my vacuum for hours a day. In fact, I'll get back to that in a sec. But anyway, so I did. And the other thing is, when you go to empty that vacuum in particular, it's very, it's hard not to end up getting some of the dust kind of come back in your face, especially if I'm doing it out at the van and, you know, it's windy or whatever. I'd put a bag around it and try to dump it out, but it was just messy. So that just disqualified that vacuum for a few reasons anyway. But anyway, the Shark is much easier to deal with because you just lift this up and you push the button right there, and it just dumps. And I got to clean this out for my wife. I usually do it every weekend, so I do that after I do the video. I finish the video, I guess. And she likes the vacuum. At first she wasn't so sure about it, but then she started using it and realized that she really liked it. It just works well. It's just the right size for her. And it actually has this 2 speeds. So the high speed is for carpet, and for doing hard floor, you just flip it to the low speed, and the brush roll slows down, and so you can vacuum the hard floor with it. And you can easily get off the pipe comes off of there, and this comes off of here easily, and it's actually a nice design. Specifically for the homeowner, I think that's a great vacuum. And they're pretty cheap. I think it was like just over $200 or something like that. So I think you're getting a good bang for your buck. And the filter, which by the way is right there, you just pull it out and you put it under the tap and you squeeze it out and clean it out. And there's another secondary filter underneath that you can clean as well. Very easy to get at, very simple. So that's a great homeowner vacuum, I would say. And that, of course, is the Shark Navigator. Then I actually did get this vacuum, but I'm going to go back to talking about this because there's a lot of talk about how great the SIBO vacuum was. And so, although I did already have the Hoover Hushtone, which is now my main vacuum, I decided I needed to try out the SIBO as well. And there's a lot of things about the SIBO that are well liked, appreciated. It is a good vacuum, definitely, but did I put that in right? And like that. This is the automatic height adjustment, so it'll go up and down depending on the height of the carpet, which is a fine feature, but I actually find it, for me, a little bit irritating because it takes a few seconds for it to sort of hunts around for a few seconds. I'm like kind of waiting for it to, every time I might stop and move a piece of furniture or whatever, and I turn back to the vacuum and lower down the handle and start to go, I have to wait a few seconds for it to think about what height it wants to be at again. And it has it's easy to pull the edge tool out. It goes really quick, which is good. You want ergonomics when you're doing this all day long for hours, which I literally am. You do want it to be really functionally easy to use. When it comes to the brush hole, there's 2 buttons on each side, and the cap pops off and the brush hole just pulls out, so it's easy to clean that out. There's an easy clean out underneath. So I would say that between this vacuum and this vacuum, they're very much almost equal. Almost. They're very close. But this vacuum is considerably more, like $200 or $300 more. And that's something to consider. It does have a light on it, though, an LED light, which is nice, whereas the Hoover Hushtone does not. But what the Hoover Hushtone has is more power. In fact, of all the vacuums I got here, the Hoover Hushtone, at least to me the way that it feels, has the most power. In fact, on the Hoover website, they say it has 152 cubic feet per minute that it moves through the vacuum. And I'm not sure if that's really completely true, but I do know that it feels like it's really powerful. And a few other features about it. This thing is designed as a commercial vacuum. So it's designed to be functional and useful and ergonomically. There's many things about it that make it work really well. The hose on the bottom there unclips. You can pull it off, clean it out easily. The hose unclips from here. This pulls out of here easily for doing your edges. Crevice tool is clipped right here. This hose unclips from here, so you can clean things out very simply and easily. The bottom plate, there's just two sliders. You pop inward, and then the bottom plate that drops off to get out the brush roll. It's just a really functional, easy to use, user-friendly is the word I'm looking for. It also has 4 height settings: bare floor, high traffic, commercial, and high carpet. Has a brush roll indicator that'll tell you that the brush roll isn't turning, although if it stops turning, it also will immediately turn off because it's got a sensor in there that it shuts it off. It has a fiber reinforced belt, so theoretically the belt should last as long as the vacuum, which is kind of nice. It has a indicator here to tell you if you're clogged, although I'm not sure how well that really works. I mean, you can tell anyway. The bag, you've got a very large bag in there. It's easy to change it with a filter after the bag, of course. But it also has a charcoal filter, which I've never seen a vacuum have that before, so that's for odors, as well as a HEPA filter. And it has a 2-speed motor on it, so you can put it at the lower setting for certain situations, and I do occasionally run into certain area rugs require me to pull the power back a little bit because of just the way it has so much power. It'll actually lift the carpet off the floor. Sometimes it gets vacuum lock, and but also it has the high power, and at high power it's really a real maniac. But let's do a little experiment here. I want to show you something interesting. Now, I mentioned about the suction of the Kirby, which is around 40 or 45 inches of water lift, and that basically means the weight of air or whatever it's picking up. I mentioned that a Kirby will have a real hard time even picking up a penny because it doesn't have a lot of suction. It has a lot of airflow, but doesn't have a lot of suction. But this vacuum has at least as much airflow, I believe, but it has more than twice the amount of suction. So I want to show you a little experiment to illustrate just what that means. I'll turn on the Kirby, and then I'll turn on the Hushtone, and I'll turn it on low power, by the way. And we'll compare, we'll watch the bag of the Kirby vacuum. So this is low power. Watch the Kirby bag. So what that basically is telling us is that This vacuum has far more suction than the Kirby. Now, the volume of air that's going through might be very similar, but the ability of that air to pick up a heavy object on the Kirby is considerably less than it is for this vacuum. And this was this vacuum at the low power setting. So that's something to bear in mind, I guess you could say. But I want to show you something on this piece of carpet here with the Hoover Hushtone. I'll turn it on. Where am I at? I'm on, yeah, that'll work. You see it's able to pick this carpet right off the floor. And not all vacuums will do that. But that's the vacuum that I use every day. And this vacuum gets used, I've been using it now full time for at least a year. And what that means is that this vacuum runs for between 4 to 6 hours a day. Because every job that I do, and if I do 4 jobs a day, which I would, 3 or 4 jobs a day, each job I'm going to be running the vacuum a minimum of an hour. So that's a very important part of the actual cleaning process when I clean a carpet. So I hope that'll help you understand why we do things the way we do, and why I've chosen this particular vacuum. As I say, I've done a lot of comparison and put a lot of thought. I've tried to think this through as to, over the years, experimenting with different vacuums to determine which is the best overall vacuum for my carpet cleaning business. And so this is why I choose the Hoover Hushtone. It does come, this is the slightly wider one, 15 inches wide, and it does have a little bit narrower version, which is 13 inches. So whichever one you choose, I do certainly recommend them. And over the last year, I've had 2 issues happen with it, neither of which has been a problem, or created a problem, I guess you could say. One is that the back of this clip broke off, but actually that hasn't actually hindered this at all. It's not creating a problem. It actually made it easier because it was just too tight on there before. And the same thing happened at the bottom here, where the plastic thing, it went down a little further there, and it didn't need to be that low. And actually that, again, seems to not interfere, and actually I kind of like it better that way. But anyway, that's it. Would I buy another one? Yes, I definitely would. If